Hello, Justin and Alicia. Today I'm going to try something new by presenting the information that I would present to you in class via this video. So I'm going to be going through this PowerPoint presentation with you on Misleading Graphs, section 1.5. If at any time you feel that you need to pause the video to make a note or you need to go back because you didn't understand something that I said, feel free to do that. After the video, we can go ahead and discuss what we learned from the video together to sort of consolidate our learning. So today I'm going to be talking to you about misleading graphs. Again, that's section 1.5 in the textbook that we're using for this unit. So most of the graphs that we have seen so far in this chapter have represented data without misleading the viewer. So what does the word misleading mean? So misleading means to give the wrong idea or impression. So sometimes if we change certain things on a graph, we can change the idea or the impression that the graph was supposed to give to a viewer, okay? So let's remind ourselves of the components that make a complete graph. So if you have not already written these things down, or you haven't made a mental note of these things, now would be a great time to do that. So on a test, I'll be looking for these things on the graphs that you produce, as well as when we take a look at misleading graphs, you'll have to know these terms and the components of a graph in order to explain to me why the graph is misleading. So let's just take a look at these again. So recall that you should have a title on all of your graphs. So the title tells me what kind of information I'm looking at. You should have labels on both the horizontal and the vertical axis of a line chart or a bar chart. And on a pie chart, you should be labeling all the sections. So when you take a look at your circle, if I've got 25%, you need to tell me what that 25% is represented on a pie chart. Okay, you should also be telling me the source of the data. Okay, so this is going to become important when we take a look at sampling and statistics. Okay, so source of the data becomes important when we're looking at reports or even in the newspaper where they get this data from. Where did they get it from? Okay, a key to a pictograph and a legend. So we're going to take a look today at what a pictograph is. It's basically a graph that is representing information via small little pictures. Okay, you should also have uniform size symbols in a pictograph. So that means that all of your symbols should be roughly the same size as to not mislead the data. Okay, also very important is our scale. So we've got two important things here about the scale. So one, does it start with 0? If not, do you indicate this by showing a break? And also, are the numbers equally spaced? Okay, so let's take a look at some examples of how graphs can be misleading and how they can give off the wrong idea or impression. Okay, so let's take a look at this graph. So one way that we can mislead data is by altering the scale of the graph. Okay, so let's take a look at this graph. Okay, everyone take a close look at it. Why is this graph misleading? Okay, well, first of all, I can see clearly that there is no title on the graph. So I have no idea what kind of information this graph is trying to tell me about. Okay, also on the axis over here, there's no title. There's also no title over here on the horizontal axis. Okay, so those are the major things that are wrong with this graph. Okay, let's take a look at what other things are wrong with it. So I'm taking a look at the scales now of the graph. So I see here that it starts at 0, which is great. Okay, I see that the horizontal axis is going up by 1, so we go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all in order, okay? I take a look over here. I see that we go from 0 to 1, which is good, 1 to 2, but then all of a sudden we're going up from 2 to 4. We go up 2 spots, and then all of a sudden from 4 to 8 we're going up 4 spots, and then from 8 to 16 we've gone up 8 spots. But how does that impact the data? My graph still looks pretty good, doesn't it? Let's take a look. So between 1 and 2, whatever information that's representing, it looks as though that is the greatest jump in numbers. So it looks like all of a sudden, bam, we're going straight up here. Okay? However, if we take a look at the scale and see exactly how many spots we've jumped up, we've gone from 0 to 8, so we've jumped up 8 spots. Okay, let's take a look at the second jump, which is between 3 and 4. Okay, so 3 starts at 4, so coming over, and 4 jumps all the way to 16. Okay, so this jump here doesn't look as significant as the first jump from 1 to 2. However, if we take a look at the numbers, we're going from 4 to 16. We've jumped up 12 spots. So in fact, the jump between 3 and 4 is far more greater. However, because of the scale, the information has been given the wrong impression. The idea of this information has been changed. Okay? Again, here's the solution in case you need to see it written down. So although the vertical scale starts at 0, it does not go up in even steps. This distorts the graph and makes it look as though the biggest jump is between 1 and 2 rather than 3 and 4. Also, as we noted at the very beginning, there are no labels on the axes, so we have no idea what the graph is representing. And there's also no title. Okay? The next graph that I want to take a look at is a pictograph. Okay, so this pictograph shows the different types of pets and a certain number of people who own different types of pets. Okay, so again, a pictograph is just a graph that represents the information via these pictures here. So this pictograph is really good because it includes a scale or a key over here. So if we see one of each kind of picture, it's indicating that 50 people have that type of pet. Okay, so we've got dogs, we've got cats, we've got horses, and we've got fish. Okay, fish, if you take a look at the bottom, seems to be representing the other column. Okay, keep that in mind. Are fish the only other kind of pet that you can have? Okay, at a first glance at this graph, okay, it looks as though a lot of people have horses. Okay, just because the horse symbol is bigger, if I were flipping through this graph in a newspaper article, the first thing that would catch my eye would be these gigantic horses. I probably wouldn't take the time to take a look at the key at the top, and I would jump to the conclusion that okay, a lot of people have horses as a pet. Okay, so let's take a look at why this graph may be misleading the data. Okay, so on this pictograph, there isn't a category for those people who do not own a pet. Okay, so this pictograph here is just saying that everyone that they've surveyed has a pet. Okay, so that's a misleading fact about this pictograph. The pictures are different sizes, as I mentioned, and it appears that more people own a horse than any other animal. Okay, so again, taking a look back at the graph, just because the horses are bigger, that's what people are going to assume right away when they take a look at this graph. Okay, an improvement that we can make would be to redraw this pictogram with each of the animals the same size and aligned with one another, as shown on the next slide. So if we take a look at the next slide, I've redrawn this pictograph, or this pictogram. You could call it a graph or a pictogram. Okay, so that all of the information is lined up. Okay, so that the spacing doesn't mislead or give the wrong idea about this data. Okay, so as you can see, all of the pictures are now about the same size and they all line up with one another. Okay, so in fact, if we take a look at this graph, this one is indicating to me now that cats, so more people own cats than any other type of pet, just because of the way that this data is now aligned and how it now looks. Okay, so again, going back to our first graph, this one here, very misleading because the horses were drawn so big, and again over here we can now see that cats are the pet that most people own. Okay, one more example that I'd like to go through is a pie graph. Okay, let's take a look at this one. So a survey was conducted to determine what food would be served at the French club party. Explain how the graph misrepresents the data. And I give you a hint here to look very closely. Okay, so with our pie graph, we assume that our circle is 100%, and then we divide our graph into the different sections depending on the percentage of data that we get. Okay, so here 53% said that they wanted crepes at this French club party, 13% said they wanted fondue, 33% said that they wanted quiche. Okay, first of all, we can make a note that there is no title on this graph, so that would be one way that the graph is misleading. Okay, take a look at the numbers. Okay, so we would just assume by looking at the numbers and assuming that this data was in a magazine or in a newspaper, we would assume that these numbers all add up, to 100%. Okay, but if you take out a calculator or you take out your phone and you actually add these numbers together, you're going to find out that the result is very different. So if we add 53% plus 33% plus 13%, we're only adding up to 99%. So what happened to that other 1%? Okay, so the other 1% could either belong to crepes, quiche, or fondue, or perhaps on this graph we need to add a sliver over here to represent an other column. So perhaps 1% of the French club wanted something else that was not offered here. Okay, so this graph would mislead or give the wrong idea about what the French club all wanted for their French club party. Okay, so again, the solution, if you want to see it written down, is first of all, there's no title on this graph, and second of all, the percents on the graph did not sum up to 100%. Okay, so some questions that we now have to ask ourselves about why misleading graphs. So why would a company produce a misleading graph? Why would they want to give the wrong idea or the wrong impression about a certain kinds of data? Okay, so take a minute and think about that. I want you to jot some things down so when I come over and speak with you, you have sort of some idea as to why companies would want to do this. My second question would be, what types of graphs might mislead the public? Okay, maybe you've seen some of these graphs already. Okay, think about some of the things that you might see in the newspapers or perhaps some of the graphs that we've already taken a look at. Okay, and what types of graphs might mislead the public. So make sure you have one or two things jotted down for these questions, because when we're done with this video, I'm going to come around and we're going to have a little discussion. Okay, so the last example I want you to try on your own. Okay, again, I want you to have something written down so when I come around, you have something to talk to me about. Okay, so this is an example sort of a pictograph, okay, of the number of people attending a Transformers convention. Okay, so we've got our Transformers here representing how many people are attending this Transformers convention. So in 1996 we had 500 people, there's our little guy there. In 2001 we had 1,000 people, there's our guy there. In 2006 we had 1,500 people, and there's the Transformer representing that amount. So why is the above information misleading? Okay, so this is an example of a misleading graph. I would like you to tell me why this information is misleading. So think about what these pictures are representing, and think about the number of people that is changing between the different years at this Transformers convention. Okay, when you're done that, hopefully I've come around and had a little chat with you. If I haven't, then I'd like you to start on your homework. So we're going to be taking a look at page 21 and page 22 in our textbook. So page 21, you're going to take a look at question number 1. So there's two different graphs there, and I'd like you to answer the questions based on the graphs. So you're going to be doing 1A, B, C, and D. Then you're going to flip over to page 22, and you're going to take a look at questions 2 and 3. And again, for question 2, you're going to be doing A, B, and C. And for question 3, you're going to be doing A, B, C, and D. Okay, if you have any questions as we're going through, please come and talk to me. And we'll also have a discussion about this video and about what we learned today as well. Okay, so I hope that this method will work out for us. Thank you so much. I hope you had a